couple of items for all of you. Starting this weekend, as we noted the other day, we will, and with collaboration and support, we will be launching our National Month of Action. So that is exciting. We've outlined a lot of those specific details, but it's starting this weekend, so wanted to note that. Also wanted to give you all an update that today the U.S. government delivered 1 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to the Republic of Korea. The friendship and alliance between our two countries run deep, especially in times of great need and hardship. As was noted when the president hosted the South Koreans here just a few weeks ago. This was done in order to ensure the safety and readiness of U.S. and ROK military forces. And today, thanks to a whole of government effort, we are delivering on that promise. And I would just note again that our plan, our commitment to deliver 80 million doses is 5 times more than any other country and 13% of the U.S. supply. And we're committed to doing that by the end of June. Also would note the Vice President is traveling to Mexico and Guatemala next week in her role overseeing diplomacy toward the Northern Triangle and Mexico. She lands in Guatemala on the evening of June 6th. She'll be on the ground there until the evening of June 7th before flying to Mexico. Then she'll be in Mexico until the evening of June 8th. She'll meet with the President of Guatemala, the President of Mexico, and as well as community leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and U.S. Embassy personnel. And I'm sure they'll do many readouts from there. The week ahead, on Monday, the President will meet with NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg at the White House. The President and the Secretary General will discuss the June 14th NATO summit in Brussels and many issues on the NATO agenda, including reinforcing transatlantic security in the face of challenges from Russia and China. They will also discuss adapting NATO to address threats like cyber attacks and climate change, while continuing to ensure a more equitable sharing of responsibility among allies. As we've said, revitalizing our alliances is a priority for this administration, and our alliance with NATO is a big part of that. As you all know, on Wednesday, the President and First Lady will also be traveling to the United Kingdom for their first stop, for their first overseas trip, and we'll have one of the members of the national security team, hopefully at the highest level. We're working out schedules on Monday to do a full preview of the trip for all of you. Last thing I would note, I think that was it, actually. Zeke, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Looking ahead to that trip, the back end, with Russian President Vladimir Putin, he had some comments today where he was suggesting that he was not expecting any concrete breakthroughs. I was hoping you describe what the president hopes to get out of that meeting, and is the president going to commit to raising issues like the imprisonment of Navalny, the imprisonment of American citizens in Russia directly with President Putin face-to-face?
Well, first I would say that the president never holds back in raising human rights issues, the detainment of activists with the Russian president, and certainly as our readout made clear when he spoke with him directly, he didn't hold back in that conversation. I don't expect he will when they meet in 2 weeks at the summit. In terms of the focus of the summit, I think we'll have more to preview on Monday. But as I've noted in here previously, I think the president expects to raise a number of issues, including Ukraine and what we've seen as aggressive behavior at the border by the Russians. He also will raise cyber activity, malign activity, problematic activity, harmful activity we've seen take place. Of course, there is the SolarWinds hack, but also the ransomware hacks, as we've talked about, the actions of criminal groups within a country. There's a responsibility of the leaders of that country to take action, and there's no doubt President Biden will be raising that directly in that conversation. I don't think we're setting this up to be a meeting where there is going to be an outcome that resolves every issue or every challenge in our relationship. We expect there still to be challenging conversations moving forward, but it's an opportunity to discuss areas where we have mutual interest, like nuclear security and stability, and also to raise issues where we have concern. And then we expect this to be a forum for that face-to-face.
Separately, the president just got back from a couple days at the beach. Heading into the summer travel season, should we expect to hear from the president encouraging Americans to travel, particularly domestically, as a way to stimulate the economy, to spend their money here at home? Is sort of as the pandemic seems to be waning and travel does seem to be picking up, is there going to be a pivot on the part of the president going forward to encourage Americans to sort of get out there and spend their money?
Well, I think the president will continue to encourage Americans to safely get out there into their communities, especially vaccinated Americans who are safer to travel, to go to restaurants, to not wear masks. And certainly we abide by CDC guidelines, as you know, but the president went to a restaurant just last weekend with the vice president, last weekend on Monday, with the vice president. They had a meal, something he hasn't done a lot of. Most Americans haven't done a lot of over the last year and a half. So certainly he will lead by action and continue to encourage Americans to take advantage of the benefits of being vaccinated, and for those who are not vaccinated to get a shot so they can take advantage of those benefits themselves.
And just one last one for me. This Friday, has the president been briefed on the unidentified aerial phenomena report, and is he satisfied with conclusions? Does he want additional work in that space?
Because it's Friday, it's always a little wacky on Friday. So let me first say that we know there have been press reports about the status of this report. This is a DoD report, and so I would certainly refer to them on the status of the report. Their work with ODNI is ongoing. The team's actively working on it, but it's not at a conclusion phase, as I understand, and as I think they've commented from their building. I will say that we take reports of incursions into our airspace by any aircraft, identified or unidentified, very seriously, and investigate each one. Safety and security of our personnel, of our operations, are of paramount concern. There's a requirement to put out this report, and certainly our appropriate teams are working on finalizing
Was the president briefed on it? Or has he
I don't
briefed
have
on
any
it?
update on internal briefings, no. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. There seems to be a bit of a shift in tone here, because last month the president was pretty adamant that he did not believe that these enhanced unemployment benefits were playing a role or factoring into people's decisions not to get back into the jobs market. Today, though, he's underscoring that these benefits are simply temporary, set to expire in 90 days. So which is it, yes or no, does the president believe that these unemployment benefits are playing a role here?
Well, I think we shouldn't lose sight of some basic facts here, which is that those governors who have made the decision, as they have every right to do, to pull back on the unemployment benefits, or not accept them, I should say accurately, that hasn't even taken effect in any state across the country. So in terms of how we're evaluating the impact, we haven't even seen the impact yet. That takes effect in June. It is important for people to understand factually that the president, no one from the administration has ever proposed making these permanent or doing it over the long term. And sometimes I think that was just an effort to make that clear in the public. So we understand there's politics at play here. That's okay. Every governor is going to make their own decision. At the end of the day, what we see as the biggest driving factor is vaccines and individuals being vaccinated, feeling safe to go back to workplaces, the fact that childcare centers have rehired, that teachers have gone back to work. Those are all positive signs. And at the end of the day, the president and this administration has created more jobs than any president, any administration in modern American history. So that's kind of how we see the jobs
But based on the data, do you believe that these benefits are having any kind of impact in people deciding not to maybe re-enter the job force right now?
Well, again, I think that's a really difficult thing to analyze, given we have created a historic number of jobs in the last 4 months, more than any president in modern American history. So, and the jobs, the UI benefits haven't even been pulled back in any state. So it's a question I'm sure we can have a discussion about in the next couple of months as we see what the impact is on different states, or if that's a factor. But we think the biggest factors overall are more people getting vaccinated, more people being comfortable and feeling safe going out into the workforce. And that's where we feel there's going to be an encouraging upward trend.
I guess I'm trying to understand what happened in the last month, though, because last month you said you didn't see any indication of that when looking through the data.
I don't think we can evaluate the data that hasn't been applied in states across the country yet. And what we're really talking about from state to state is governors making a decision to pull back on accepting unemployment benefits for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. That's it. It hasn't even started yet. So I would leave it to all of you and your outside analysts to decide whether that is a big factor in terms of economy and data, or whether that is a political discussion we're having. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Does the White House have any reaction to Facebook's decision to suspend President Trump for 2 years? Was this a reasonable consequence for what he said?
Well, as always, it's a decision for the company to make and any platform to make, and clearly they've come out and made their decision. Our view continues to be, though, that every platform, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, any other platform that is disseminating information to millions of Americans, has a responsibility to crack down on disinformation, to crack down on false information, whether it's about the election or even about the vaccine, as we're trying to keep the American public safe and get more people or return to normal out in society. And I think as we look at it, we learned a lot from President Trump, the former president, over the last couple of years about his behavior and how he uses these platforms. It feels pretty unlikely that the zebra is going to change his stripes over the next 2 years. We'll see.
So does this decision validate what President Biden has repeatedly said about Mr. Trump, which is that words matter?
Well, I don't know that it's a validation. I think the president isn't the only one who thinks that. Words do matter. Words do have an impact. We saw the impact on January 6th of words on social media platforms, and we've seen the impact of words as it relates to disinformation traveling around the vaccine, around election integrity. So, of course, we think words matter. This is a decision by a private sector company. We'll see what their evaluation is a couple of years from now, and what other steps they can take, most importantly.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Jen, our reporting indicates that the Biden administration is considering counter cyber attacks to stop the ransomware criminals in Russia. How big a factor is the upcoming summit in that decision making? Is there a concern that if you did that before the meeting in Geneva, it could derail the talks? And if it doesn't happen before then, what message does it send to Russia after these multiple cyber intrusions?
Well, let me first say that we always reserve the option of responding to behavior or actions that are unacceptable and are harmful. And some of those responses are seen and some of them are unseen. And we typically don't give a timeline on that in a public capacity. But I will also note to you that when we announced the invitation to have this discussion, it was also in the same time period where we announced the sanctions that we were putting in place in response to harmful actions by the Russian government, right? In response to SolarWinds, in response to their engagement in our own election. So we expect this is diplomacy in action here, right? We will take action when warranted, sometimes seen, sometimes unseen. We typically don't predict that ahead of time, and we also will look for areas of opportunity to have a discussion. But we are not having this summit as a reward. We're not having this summit because we expect to only talk about areas where we agree or disagree.
And in the president's budget blueprint, there's only about $1.3 billion dedicated to bolstering cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. Given what we've seen over the last few weeks, is that enough? Are there talks that more resources need to be dedicated to this, or are you thinking more to leave this to the private sector for those companies that we've seen that have been impacted?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I will say that we know that the ransomware threat is urgent, it's complex, and it's been increasing over the last several years. And, it feels new to us over the last couple of weeks, but it has been increasing rapidly around the world over the last several years. One of the reasons that we have initiated a rapid review internally is because we recognize that threat. And we will assess based on that review what additional needs there are, both from the federal government in coordination with Congress or from the private sector. And that review is focused on the disruption of ransomware infrastructure and actors working closely with the private sector, building an international coalition, of course, which will be a focus of the president, will be a topic of discussion, I should say, of the president's foreign trip, expanding cryptocurrency analysis, which we know is a factor given so many of these ransomware attacks are, if ransom is paid, which of course we don't recommend and don't advise from the FBI, but it's often done through cryptocurrency channels, and reviewing our own policies. So that review is ongoing internally with our national security team, and we'll assess what additional needs might be needed.
And one last bit of housekeeping. Last month you said you didn't have an update, but that you maybe expected the president to get his first physical soon. Do you have any update to provide on that? Should we expect that to happen this summer, or is there anything else you can give us?
It will definitely happen this year, and when he has his next physical, we will provide that information transparently to all of you. But I don't have a date for you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen.